Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into an anthology of 4 absolutely terrifying, escalating Reddit stories that take our everyday modern conveniences and turn them into absolute nightmares. So if you love a good scare that makes you look twice at your smartphone, or, double-check your locks before bed, you are definitely in the right place.
We're actually going to skip our usual agenda today, just to preserve the twists and turns of these dark tales. We're going to explore exactly what happens when the digital world bleeds just a little too closely into our physical reality. And we're starting with a deeply relatable modern horror, booking a suspiciously cheap, isolated cabin out in Northern California.
Tale number 1, the cheap Airbnb, a remote cabin getaway.
Okay, picture this. Our narrator desperately needs a quiet retreat to get some remote work done, so they book a recently listed, reviewless cabin hosted by a guy named Daniel. Now, it's literally half the price of anything else on the market, but hey, a deal's a deal, so they book it anyway. Upon arrival, the house matches the photos perfectly, but it's dead quiet, and it smells just a little bit stale inside. But what really catches their eye is a tiny sign sitting at the bottom of the staircase, completely blocking the second floor. It reads, "Upstairs is locked, not included." I mean, that is a super creepy detail to leave out of an entire home listing, right? When messaged about it, Daniel instantly replies and just says it's for storage.
But the real terror? That sets in on day 2. So after hearing these heavy, slow footsteps right above their head at exactly 3:12 a.m. the night before, the narrator checks the Wi-Fi network just out of pure habit. And right there, next to their own laptop connection, is an unfamiliar, very bluntly named device upstairs. The narrator messages Daniel again, who gives a quick, completely dismissive reply, claiming it's just an old device. But that night, the heavy footsteps return.
Driven by pure, unadulterated panic, the narrator decides to investigate the upstairs. The door is slightly ajar. Inside, they find this makeshift bedroom completely littered with food containers and dozens of photos scattered across the floor. But they aren't just any photos. They're pictures of the narrator sleeping, taken from inside the house. Just as they drop the photos in shock, they hear a quiet voice right behind them whisper, "You weren't supposed to come up here." They bolt barefoot into the woods and immediately call the cops. The police show up and find the house absolutely spotless, like no one had ever even been there. But as the narrator drives away, they message Daniel one last time to ask who is in the house. And Daniel instantly texts back the exact same phrase, "You weren't supposed to go upstairs."
But here's the thing. The horror doesn't end when you leave the cabin. The narrator finally returns to their own home, miles and miles away, hoping to just feel safe again. But when they check their phone, they find a new, horrifying device connected to their personal, private home Wi-Fi network. The name? Device Downstairs.
All right, let's move right into tale number 2, the smart home intruder, a chilling lesson in smart home security.
This story features a recently divorced woman who is living alone in a 4-bedroom house. Understandably terrified of break-ins, she installs a brand new smart home security system. There are no cameras yet, but there's an app that logs every single time a door opens or a light turns on. At first, she just assumes she's dealing with system glitches or maybe a rat in the laundry room. But then she actually sits down and checks the app's logs. The timeline outlines this silent, horrifying progression of an intruder. You can literally track them moving from the laundry room, sneaking through the entryway, up to the second-floor hallway, and finally, over 3 hours later in the middle of the night, opening her bedroom door.
So naturally, she calls the police. The officers arrive, search the entire house from top to bottom, and find absolutely no one. They note that there's no sign of forced entry anywhere, and her bedroom door was even locked from the inside. They basically brush it off, blaming the strange scratch marks on her bedroom lock on her muscle memory struggling with a new keyhole. But later that night, as she's lying terrified in her bed, the app notifications start pinging again. The second-floor hallway light just turned on, right outside her room.
And this is the absolutely crucial, terrifying realization. The intruder never actually left. Through the app, she realizes this person is moving around, but they're never leaving the second floor. She finally checks the one place the police ignored, the tiny linen closet right outside her bedroom door. When she pulls it open, she finds a gap beside the vacuum cleaner that definitely wasn't there before, and a literal puddle reeking of ammonia and urine. The intruder had been crouching in that tiny, cramped space all day, right outside her door, just waiting for her to fall asleep.
Escalating things quite a bit, let's look at tale number 3. Purgatory is an Applebee's.
Our third story follows a guy who dies of a sudden, massive heart attack while he's out walking his dog, Tater. Now, his death is the direct result of a lifetime of indulging in extreme, artery-clogging stunt food. We're talking massive, multi-patty burgers and mountains of greasy fries. But instead of waking up at the pearly gates, he wakes up sitting in a dingy, dimly lit Applebee's. When he jumps up and tries to escape through the front door, he discovers the horrifying truth: the restaurant is literally suspended over a roaring pit of eternal hellfire. He looks down and sees millions of the damned eternally crawling all over one another, melting in the flames.
It turns out his gluttony earned him a very, very specific punishment. To avoid being tossed into the pit of fire outside, he's forced to sit in a sticky laminate booth with a waitress named Cheryl. He has to eat his way through a horrific menu to repent for the sin of destroying his own body. We're talking appetizers of live stinging black hornets, entrees of endless nachos that induce sickening burning acid reflux, and a final meal that maliciously changes every single time.
He pushes through relentless vomiting and agonizing pain, but the final meal, it's always a lethal trick. One meal is raw, tetrodotoxin-laced pufferfish that slowly paralyzes and kills him. The next time, it's a shimmering plate of shattered glass that completely tears his throat apart. And the absolute worst catch here is that every single time he dies in that booth from the final meal, boom, he wakes right back up at the table, completely resetting his purgatory loop.
Finally, after countless cycles, Cheryl brings out a 7-foot live rattlesnake for his dessert. He is just paralyzed with fear. He finally breaks down, pulls his hands back from the table, and tells Cheryl he simply cannot do it. He is way too full to eat. Cheryl just smiles softly at him and says her mother always told her, "The meal's only done when you're full," and she turns to go get his check. The agonizing realization hits him like a ton of bricks. The only way to escape this self-made prison of gluttonous torture was to finally just stop eating and say no thank you.
And for our final story, tale number 4, Countdown to The Flash, an apocalyptic timer.
This tale scales things way up. It's told through the eyes of a watcher, which is someone who has the secret, lifelong ability to see a glowing digital countdown timer on a person's right arm exactly 1 year before they die. They've seen it on their grandmother, they've seen it on random strangers, but they have never told a single soul about it. Well, our narrator's quiet life absolutely shatters when their own timer suddenly appears on their arm. It reads exactly 20 days, 12 hours, and 37 minutes remaining. It is a terrifying, sickening realization of their own impending death, but it's compounded into something much worse the very next morning.
They step outside their front door and discover an impossible, apocalyptic reality. Every single person, from the cashier down at the grocery store, to the kids playing in the local park, to their boss, who casually wishes them a good weekend, has the exact same countdown clock glowing on their arm. And it doesn't deviate by more than 5 minutes between any of them. The entire world is going to end in less than 3 weeks, and literally, nobody but the narrator knows it's coming.
The true horror here really lies in the massive scope of the story. At the very end of the narrator's post, there's this eerie post-apocalyptic archival note attached. It reveals that this Reddit post was actually Registry Case 33002, and it was written mere minutes before a mysterious sudden extinction event called the Flash wiped out almost all of humanity. The archives note that only 32 of these watchers were ever even identified globally, and out of the entire planet, only about 8,000 humans actually survived the event. And sadly, it's pretty safe to say the author of the post was likely not one of them.
And so, we wrap up this explainer with a pretty chilling thought. We've looked at the terror of our physical, safe sanctuaries being invaded, our own digital home networks betraying us, our bad habits creating our own personal hells, and the absolute crushing finality of an apocalyptic death timer. In a world where technology tracks our every move and logs our every single action, what would you do if you suddenly possessed the ultimate data point? If you knew exactly when it all ends? How would you spend your final 20 days?